Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Kelly, CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in today. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. And today I want to welcome one of our new members, Wolverine Pickleball, located in Ann Arbor. And their founder says, our passion is to create a space where people feel seen and welcomed, where they can have fun and engage in the health and social benefits that pickleball offers while connecting to a vibrant community. So pickleball is certainly all the rage, so welcome to Wolverine Pickleball and their team.
I haven't tried it yet. I shouldn't admit this because I feel like I'm the last person on planet Earth that has not tried pickleball. But with Wolverine Pickleball, I'm gonna have to go check it out. Somebody show me. I'm an expert at ping pong. I don't know if I'd ever shared that with you. I'm probably one of the best ping pong players you've ever met, maybe.
Well,
But they say if you're good at ping pong, you're gonna love pickleball.
I've also not played pickleball, so maybe this is a sign for an SBAM staff pickleball challenge or something. I do play tennis though. I don't know if that translates as well as ping pong, but we'll find out. So. All right, so Brian, we do have a special guest, but we have a couple of stories to touch on first, starting with an update on minimum wage. So the governor had asked the Supreme Court for guidance regarding minimum wage. That deadline has passed. What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's kind of an unusual circumstance for the governor and essentially for the department, the Wage and Hour Division would be asking the Supreme Court, like, hey, what should we do with minimum wage? But this is because it is tied to a case, the adopt and amend case that we've talked so much about on this briefing. So they put they didn't say what the minimum wage was supposed to go to. They put a formula, and the formula was a bit confusing, or maybe a lot confusing. And so the governor with the attorney general had devised 5 different potential interpretations. And what they said to the Supreme Court was, all right, here are the 5 different ways that we could read your ruling. We think that number one, the first way that we have laid it out is what you meant. And if you think any different, let us know. And if we don't hear from you from yesterday was the deadline, then they're going to go with option number 1. And so that means essentially, even though the Supreme Court didn't say anything more, by not saying anything, they were essentially confirming the governor's preference for option number 1. So what does that mean? That's the one that we told you to expect. So when we had first done some kind of back of the napkin calculations after the Supreme Court decision came out, we came to numbers that were very, very close with option number 1. So starting February 21st of 2025, minimum wage will go to $12.48 an hour. And then it will go up from there on January 1st thereafter. It will go up to January 1st, 2026, $13.29. And then it'll go the next January of 2027, $14.16, and then $14.97 in January of 2028. So these are the same numbers that we had shared with you before, what we told you to probably expect. And as of yesterday, now the Supreme Court could still come out and say, no, wait. And if they wanted to give a late answer, of course they would. And of course it would be binding. I would be very, very surprised if they did. I expect the Wage and Hour Division within the Department of Labor, the state's Department of Labor, will publish the new rate. The only open question in my mind, Sarah, is whether or not they have, there's an interim. There's already an inflationary increase that was supposed to happen January 1st of 2025. So now that there's already one locked in for February 21st, 6 months from the ruling, will they do like a small short-term increase and then turn on an increase in February? That's actually still pretty unclear to me whether or not they'll be. So right now, minimum wage is $10.33. We know it'll go to $12.48 on February 21st of next year. But between January 1st of next year and February 20th of next year, there could be a different minimum wage in place. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, when that happens, if that is announced, you'll hear it here first.
Absolutely. We will make sure to keep that resource page updated as well. All right, so Brian, we've also covered the Federal Reserve on this show quite a bit, and they are meeting this week, and it's the first time that we are expecting a rate cut. So tell us more.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years that we've had this ongoing discussion, and I don't think there's any question at all. On Wednesday, there will be a rate cut. The real question is how much it'll be. So the rate that the Federal Reserve controls is essentially the rate that banks borrow at. So it's the overnight Fed funds rate. And so when they cut it by 25 basis points or 50 basis points, a 1/4% or a 0.5%, that tends to filter through to the rest of the system. That's like the kind of a base rate that everything else flows from. So we are expecting a rate cut. I was looking at the prediction markets, and basically it's 50% or 49% expect a 25 basis point cut, 50% or 51% expect a 50 basis point increase. And nobody expects, apparently, when it was zero, the prediction markets had zero people expected to stay the same. So it's been a few years since we've seen, that the rates have been up high like this. Now we will take some step down, and the big question really at this point is just by how much.
So Brian, what are the major factors that favor a bigger cut?
Well, the bigger cut is favored by the economic factors that the Federal Reserve is looking at that make them worried about the jobs market. So they see things like the jobs market, the monthly jobs numbers cooling off. They see that a lot of the job creation that is happening is not in the sectors of the economy that are driven by pure private sector activities. They're seeing the unemployment rate kind of creep up a little bit, not high, but just kind of trending 6 months in a row, just kind of trending generally upwards. So they're seeing all of these different aspects of the jobs market start to show some cooling, moderation in income increases as well. These are all the things that kind of go in the basket of the Federal Reserve may be worrying about the economy and recession more than inflation, and therefore might go with a more aggressive rate cut.
All right, so conversely, what factors would favor a smaller cut?
So the smaller cut, really, they're still looking at inflation that is not at the target that they want to see. And then if you look at the headline inflation consumer price index at 2.5%, but you peel back the layers on it, there's still some things that they're going to be concerned about within the category of inflation. First is it's higher than their target rate. The target rate that they want to see the CPI at is 2%. But also, so it's higher, but not that much higher. But when you peel it back, you see that there's actually in consumer goods, less food and energy commodities, you see deflation, but you actually see inflation still at uncomfortably high levels in services. And so as they look at it, it's like, yeah, but there's still some inflationary pressures that exist. Ultimately, though, the signal that I will take away from Wednesday is that if they go with a 0.5 point rate cut, then that'll be a signal that they're much more worried about the economy. And maybe will feel like they should have started cutting rates earlier, and now they have to make up ground. If it's a 1/4%, what that says is they feel like they hit it just right, and now is the time to start tailoring it back a little bit. They're not going to do any less than a 1/4%. That's just the increment that they work on. 1/4% means that they feel like all the data pointed to the right to this point, and they're ready to move with it. And that's why, even though I like interest rates better, I mean I like interest rates lower. The signal that a 1/4% rate cut sends is that they still have confidence in the balance and being able to balance inflation and the economy.
All right, well, I guess we'll find out on Wednesday which way it goes. We do have a special guest joining us today from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, some great partners of ours. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brian, for that conversation.
All right, very good. So Pat Gill is joining us today, and we love to have our friends from Blue Cross come in and talk with us about important issues, especially issues that maybe you haven't well, I know so many of our members have offer health insurance to their employees, but there are a lot of different features to it, a lot of different aspects of managing health. So we think of healthcare in terms of premiums, like premiums and the cost of health insurance, but really behind all of that is health. And so we like to really zero in on the things that be done to improve health. So Pat Gill, Strategic Sales Support Manager, thank you, Pat, for joining us today. And so we're going to start with what is well-being. So, we hear these terms like wellness and wellness programs. What is well-being and why is it important for employers that are really looking to manage their healthcare costs?
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. Appreciate this opportunity to talk about well-being. So think about employee well-being as the overall, it's a sum, right? It's the overall physical, emotional, mental, social, and financial health of your employees. So it's the sum of all those things. You hear it as, referred to as employee wellness sometimes, and think of it as a way that employers increasingly are using to attract talent as well as retain really good workers. And then from a practical standpoint, it's about preventing burnout and instead ensuring employees are healthy, happy, and have everything they need to thrive in the workplace. It varies, it looks different from person to person because folks are just in different stages of their wellness journey, their health journey. And it can be influenced by factors like the usual suspects, sleep, nutrition, and fitness, but also things like relationship with coworkers, the decisions they make, even outside of work. That all kind of bleeds into employee well-being. So the reason it's important, think of it like in three big buckets, right? One, we spend a lot of time at work, whether that's in-person, virtual, a combination, right? Just a third of your day or more is spent with folks at work. Studies have shown increasingly that employers see the value of a well-being program. So employers report that it helps reinforce mission and vision of an organization, but in practical terms, 60% of groups and employers feel that a good well-being program helps retain top talent, and 61% have responded that it actually helps productivity. That's kind of the second reason. And then the third, just from an employee perspective and the practicality of that, a well-designed, participated in well-being program tends to build more engagement and skin in the game for employees. So basically, you're looking for folks to proactively manage their health. And the long game there is it staves off chronic conditions, it improves healthy habits that already exist, and hopefully helps them walk away from bad habits that they are looking to kick.
Yeah, I think that, intuitively that'll make sense to our audience and just, knowing, number one, the thing I love about small businesses is that they are kind of run like families. In fact, sometimes it literally is family. But like the idea, it's just natural to know about, care about, want to respond to, and take care of the team. So what are the sorts of things then that somebody should in a well-being program? What are some hallmarks, some factors? What should an employer be looking for to include?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think the headline there would be a good well-being solution provider or a vendor or solution itself. It strikes a balance, right? It needs to be able to do a few things well. So just a couple of those. It needs to look at health holistically. So I think when we started talking about well-being, it was really all about fitness, accountability, things like tracking steps, nutrition guides, right? But realizing that well-being is a much broader space to play in. It encompasses things like emotional balance, there's stress management that's involved, and then also this approach of recognizing that each employee is an individual in different stages of the game, right? So that kind of holistic approach is one thing that a solution needs to be able to do well. I think the other thing is, even as you design a really good program, member engagement is key. So you can design like the best solution, but if you don't get members to participate consistently and sustain that engagement through the year, that really doesn't help build healthy habits, or on the flip side, help them kick bad habits, right? So a program should make an employee should catch their attention, make them want to sign up, use the solution, and use it consistently. I think the other thing to look for are useful tools and capabilities, right? So again, from a practical perspective, does it have a pretty good tobacco cessation coaching program? Does it integrate with Apple Watch? Devices that enable a member to track their progress, set a goal, track progress, right, and see the success there. Does it continuously improve on the member experience and content? So part of the trick here is serving up content that's relevant, interesting, and it just keeps a member engaged throughout the year again. And then motivational tools, right? Like some people just need to get over that initial inertia to take care of themselves. So it needs to be able to do that. And then expertise or a branch that understands incentives and rewards and the role those things play in motivating a member to do things for their health is another great thing for a solution to have.
Great, thanks, Pat. And people, our audience is going to have different experiences in, maybe they've tried something, maybe it's worked really well, maybe they're kind of struggling to get that engagement. What are some, if somebody's listening and say, this really makes a lot of sense to me, I want to engage, I want to plug into more of what Blue Cross has to offer. Maybe they have some other kind of well-being option out there that they're using. What are some obstacles that somebody should expect to encounter? Maybe some thoughts on how to anticipate, but then get around the obstacle, especially for those who maybe have tried and failed to get the type of engagement that'll make a difference.
Yeah, no, great question. So kind of speaking from experience, because like we're constantly trying to tweak the offering and making sure that it does the right thing for our members. But I'll just give you a couple of challenges, but one is gaining broad awareness and then driving actual member participation is a big hurdle. And it kind of converse to the other point, what does a solution need to do well? Part of it is just getting the word out there and encouraging members to participate. How do you make it interesting? But I think, kind of the next step to that is, it's like a New Year's resolution, right? Like gung-ho the first week, and then the second week, it's like, what happened? But the continued engagement is the other key component, because you really want to drive, especially for folks who are either looking to build healthier habits or kick something, you want true habit formation or change. And part of kind of the underlying why do some solutions deliver on that and why do some fail to do so, I think there's just a fundamental difference in level of a solution understanding human behavior and incentives and what makes a person tick, right? So you got to get into the motivation of the individual. I think the other challenge is ensuring a good member experience. You got to make it like simple enough so that it's not terribly complicated to use or participate in. There's got to be that balance between the app is super intrusive and bugging me every second of the day versus, not, reminding me about key things, right? So understanding that dynamic in human behavior. I think some of the other challenges that we've seen just as Blue Cross, right? But the ability to, some employers want to customize content and the way things are delivered for their members, and the lack of ability to do that presents a challenge. And I think just being able to, it's tied back to understanding what makes the members tick. If a solution does not offer a simple way to manage and offer up an incentive program and reward structure, that can also get in the way. Like I've seen plans that are super complicated and it frustrates not only the member, but the group itself as they try to administer it, and no one's happy, and it doesn't last.
Yeah, so great suggestions. Now, we wouldn't be talking about this if I didn't know at the punchline that you guys are doing some great work in this area. So maybe just well-being programs and solutions by Blue Cross. What's evolving? What's changing? What do you got?
No, thanks. Yeah, so really happy to share with the team that we are going to be transitioning vendors beginning January 1st of 2025. We are currently working with WebMD, and for the longest time, it was a great partner. But as we've talked about, needs evolve, and solutions need to keep up with that and continue to be fresh and relevant for members. So we conducted an extensive RFP, looked at all the market leaders, and happy to have selected a partner for today and for the future, and that's Virgin Pulse Personify. This is kind of their bread and butter. And just some reasons we picked them: it's a very intuitive, user-friendly platform. It's a very engaging solution. They have found a way to essentially replicate the experience with Facebook. I'll just use that as an example. And the reason I picked them is the content that shows up on your feed is going to be different from the content that shows up on my feed based on what we click on, our interests, and the different sources of information. The magic in Virgin Pulse's sauce is they take information from claims data, information that the member enters when they first sign up, information from the way the member clicks on, like, so what interests a member as they interact with the app. They take all that, feed it into an AI engine, so it serves up different information for each person, and it's personalized. And that's a way they are able to drive that engagement. They have a much broader view of well-being. Oh, and then philosophically, here's another thing. So I talked about understanding what motivates people. Virgin Pulse philosophically takes a small steps approach in serving up well-being. And what that means is they understand that you're not going to change overnight. So it needs to be broken down, like a big objective needs to be broken down in smaller chunks. And the encouragement of success that a member feels from the start carries over and makes them want to participate more. So it's all about, how do I get more wins for the member on a daily basis so they keep coming back? So that is what they're masters at. So they're able to do that small steps approach. Talked about personalized content and things like, they've got an improved tobacco cessation program. So just tying back to the small steps approach, there are solutions out there that require members to actually establish a quit date before they participate in the program. And that's great, right? Like, the commitment is there on one hand. On the other hand, you've got members who are all, coming in from different stages of trying to kick the habit. You can have members who have tried unsuccessfully before, right? But they're back again, not quite sure what the quit date ought to be, or if they can even do this, right? Members are starting out and they don't know what the quit date looks like. When will I be ready to do that? So Virgin Pulse is like, you don't have to establish a quit date. You just want to be interested in it. There are no limits to the number of sessions you take. And everything I described is all in the base program. So this is available to all groups. But if a group is interested, there are also 2 levels of buy-ups that are available that incorporate rewards and greater customization. So new vendor, much broader view of the way well-being is defined and solutions to act on that, as well as different ways for groups to participate from a base level, which is very fully outfitted, to buy-ups that do more in the rewards and customization space.
Pat Gill from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, thank you so much for the conversation today on well-being and wellness. I'm very, very confident that our people, entrepreneurs, they get it, they understand. Of course, customization and ease of use, so important for entrepreneurs that are just trying to run their businesses. Thanks for being ahead of the solutions, and we'll look forward to the update coming January 1st.
Thanks, Brian and Sarah. Really appreciate the time, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few other stories to get to today. The next up is that we are expecting a Corporate Transparency Act decision related to our lawsuit as early as this month. But there's a new CTA lawsuit in the Eastern District of Texas. So how does it line up with our lawsuit, Brian?
Yeah, there's and I was thinking, actually there's been 2 other lawsuits filed, but one of them I was fairly unimpressed with. It's essentially like a homeowners association that is saying that they should qualify for the nonprofit exemption. I don't think it's particularly, the case they're making is not particularly relevant to our case. But in the Eastern District of Texas, there was a corporate transparency lawsuit that was filed, and theirs really is focused on interstate commerce. So the plaintiffs on this lawsuit are they have rental businesses, so they have a house and they rent it out to somebody. There's no interstate commerce that happens, and so what they're leaning into this idea that the federal government didn't have enumerated powers in the first place to do that, to pass that regulation, and they have really strong plaintiffs that can make that case. So even though we actually make a similar case in ours, it's not the main argument that we rely on. So I think it's a nice complementary case to the lawsuit that we have brought, and also to the lawsuit that the National Small Business Association took, which is now going through a different district's court of appeals. So there are multiple cases that are happening around the country. Now, looking at the judge in the Eastern District of Texas, where this lawsuit was filed, this judge, I think, is to be pretty friendly to the argument that's being made. So I will not be surprised if I think this just enhances the chances that you'll have different decisions that are made on different legal basis, which will make it more likely ultimately for the Supreme Court to take up the Corporate Transparency Act, that of course we hope will be struck down in its entirety, but at least in large part, given our concerns. Our main argument, we make Fourth Amendment argument as kind of our central argument, but also Fifth Amendment violations and enumerated powers. This one really, really leans into the enumerated powers. And what I love about the case is that they have plaintiffs that match up with that argument really, really well.
All right, let's move on. The U.S. Census Bureau published a state ranking report on real income growth, and there were some surprising insights. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so on real income growth, this is where they take nominal income growth, like just in overall income growth, but then they subtract out inflation. Remember, inflation is something that you can look at regionally. It's not just a countrywide, it's different inflation levels in different parts of the country. And of course, income grows at different rates at different parts of the country. So the adjusted for inflation, household income dropped by 3% in Michigan from 2019 to 2023. So a 3% purchasing power drop over the course of those 4 years. That's there was actually a number that I was a little bit surprised with. I would have expected it to be a lot smaller, but the reason I thought it would be smaller is because I'm often looking at the national numbers. So we're sharing like inflation. Most of those numbers that when they're published, they're national numbers, and then income growth. And so when you look at it on a nationwide basis, the average was about a 1% drop. So Michigan did not fare as well as the national average. In fact, came in at the 15th lowest, worst, if you will, when it comes to real income growth. So we have seen nominal income growth. People's, higher wages are being paid here, but that has been eaten up by inflation and then some. And it really is the reason why you see kind of generally dissatisfaction with the economy, even though those economic stats look like they're pretty good. I think this really, at the heart of it, this is it. People are frustrated that, yeah, I might be making more money, but I can afford fewer things. The median household income, that inflation adjusted income is 69,183. And again, inflation adjusted back before it was 71,322. And then nationwide, as I mentioned, a drop of 1% rather than 3%, but quite a bit higher than Michigan, $77,719. So there's that unfortunately the gap between the national average in terms of household income in Michigan's got wider over the course of the last 4 years.
All right, let's end on this one. European population estimates were recently published, looking ahead about 50 years. And overall, the EU population is projected to drop by about 4%, but one country really does stand out. Which one is it?
That country is Greece, and eye-popping projections on population decline over the next 50 years. Estimates are of the country losing 25% of its population. So the European Union as a whole down 4% is what's projected. So kind of like the US, just projected population declines over the decades. But just to put it in context, in 2022, there were fewer than 77,000 births, the lowest in about a century in that country, and deaths were about 140,000. So almost a 2-to-1 for every what they call a fertility rate. So it's 1.32 births per woman, which means 1.32 births per 2 people. Okay, so that's just a built-in decline. So every 2 people makes 1 new. It's just you can see how that compounds over time. And so as we look at the population woes of much of the Western world, including here in Michigan, including in the US, it's certainly nothing compared to what's built in with Greece, but perhaps a wake-up call that population decline really hits us in a lot of different ways, and in ways that we cannot possibly anticipate. So hopefully this is, to me, it was, I said, as I described it, eye-popping, but to policymakers to look at it and say, what is behind this this trend that we're seeing, and what are the ramifications for it, and what can be done potentially to slow or change trends that are putting us in a position where really, especially in our country, we have never been in before.
All right, we did run out of time for our Data Monday report, but we'll save that and have some refresh slides for you next Monday. Have a great rest of your week, and be sure to tune back in here Monday at 3 p.m.
See you next week, everybody.